So I came across some jarring information tonight and I have to tell someone about it. So I've been keeping tabs on Neuralink a lot lately, Elon Musk's brain chip company, because with all of the 1930 style propaganda coming from the White House as of late, I just have this really bad feeling that Elon Musk might be our Dr. Joseph Mengele. And here's why. First of all, if you haven't already, please go follow me over on Substack, The Dre Dossier. It's free. The link is in my bio. This full video is going to be posted there along with a deeper dive and with all of my sources cited. So please go subscribe. So in July of 2025, this year, Elon Musk announced that Neuralink needs to go from 7 brain implants to about 1,000 implants by the end of 2026. Now, that's about 993 people over the course of, 15 months now, who would be willing to get an experimental brain surgery. That's like 60 some odd patients a month. And at the rate in which it took him to get 7 done, feels nearly impossible, if you ask me. Now, there are a couple things that have been bothering me, especially about these Neuralink sites, because they have approved through the FDA 2 sites in the United States. One, which is in Phoenix, Arizona at the Barrow Neurological Institute, and the other, which is in Miami, Florida, which is at the University of Miami, which has a big neurological brain study program. Both of those cities also have really, really large ICE detention centers very close by. Now, yes, in Miami, they have Alligator Alcatraz, but they also have Chrome Detention Facility, which is like their super large one where a lot of the intake usually goes through. From December of 2024 to February of 2025, there have been 3 deaths once a month at Chrome Detention Facility, and all of them had to do with neurological symptoms, like brain hemorrhages and seizures and vomiting and the like. Not unlike what a lot of the outcomes of the monkeys that Elon Musk used to operate on looked like. Just for the record. Now, there's a different kind of pattern that's equally concerning in Phoenix, Arizona. So Neuralink operates, like I said, at the Barrow Neurological Institute, and then right nearby there are major ICE detention facilities, Eloy and Florence. Now, the amount of time spent in solitary confinement at these Arizona facilities went from 14 days in 2024, which had been a pattern since like 2021, to 38 days in 2025 as the average. Like, that's a 271% increase. 38 days is more than a month with no witnesses, no oversight, no documentation of what's happening. And all of this just so happens to be going on and increasing right when Neuralink is also trying to desperately scale up their operations so they can stay competitive with other countries. So those patterns have been bothering me for quite some time now, right? Especially with the Alligator Alcatraz now like missing hundreds of detainees that have no record and like all of it. So I decided to dig a little deeper tonight, and I went to usaspending.gov, which is this website where you can search for all of the federal contracts that are made public. So you can search for anything related to, I don't know, the Department of Defense and neurosurgery, for instance. And that's when I noticed something kind of weird happening, because Honolulu kept coming up a lot with DoD contracts and neurological surgery, like over and over and over again. And I'm thinking to myself, why Honolulu? Like, what's going on in Honolulu? I mean, all of them were from the Department of Defense, and they were all for these different neurological services, neurological procedures, neurological surgery practices, and they were all ramping up starting in 2025. And the company that was getting all of these contracts was called NIR LLC, and the work was being performed out of Triple Army Medical Center, which is this really big military hospital in Honolulu. I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, well, maybe this is just normal medical family military care. But when I went to look up NIR LLC to see if I could learn more about them, there was nothing about them online. There's no company website, there's no physician names, nothing on them. I mean, for a medical contractor who's doing so many neurological surgery procedures with federal money, not having so much as a website feels odd. But then, at the very bottom of the Google search, I saw a link to a MapQuest that said NIR, and it had like a little point of where it was. So I clicked the link, and it showed NIR LLC at the location of 888 South King Street in Honolulu. Now, if you were to look up NIR LLC on any other map, nothing comes up. But when you type in 888 South King Street, Honolulu, something does come up, and that something is Straub Medical Center, which is one of Hawaii's largest civilian hospitals that has a major neurology and neurosurgery department. So now I'm really confused, right? Because why is their billing address a commercial office building, but then they're actually operating out of a civilian hospital with a huge neurosurgery center, but then the Department of Defense is paying them for services at a military hospital all on the same island? Like, this feels like a paper trail that's being obfuscated on purpose a little bit. I'm thinking, well, maybe does Neuralink operate out of Honolulu, Hawaii? And I just didn't know about it. And I look it up, and no, Hawaii isn't listed on the official trial site. It's just Miami, Florida, and Phoenix, Arizona, and then Toronto, Canada. I'm thinking to myself, well, just because the FDA doesn't know about it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily happening. So I decided to go on LinkedIn to see if I can find anybody who has Neuralink listed as their current employer and also lives in Honolulu, Hawaii. And that's when I find two people. First one is a clinical project manager who works at Neuralink and lives in Honolulu, Hawaii. And it looks like she's been with Neuralink for a few years now. And I looked at her job responsibilities, and it said trial site management, implementation of clinical trials, management and oversight of external vendors, negotiating and building relationships with organizations. She manages trial sites and external vendors, but Hawaii isn't an official Neuralink trial site. So what you doing, sis? The other person I found was this guy who runs something called Hang Ten Capital, and he lives in Honolulu, Hawaii, and it's a private equity firm that also runs out of Honolulu, Hawaii. And they invest in things like fintech and food startups, but I looked at their portfolio and saw Neuralink listed. All right, so we have some smoking guns in Honolulu. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if the thesis here is that something sus is going on with Neuralink and the operation facilities being close to ICE detention centers, does this fit that thesis? Like, is there an ICE detention facility near these, medical facilities in Honolulu? And oh boy, did I regret asking that question. Apparently, in February of 2025, ICE had signed an agreement to start housing detainees at FDC Honolulu. That's a 992-bed detention center facility. Like, I didn't know about, did anybody else know about this? And then I found an article from July 2025 that was talking about this and was saying that detainees were being transferred to Hawaii from Florida and Arizona detention facilities, the exact two states where Neuralink trials had started. And so I looked up the distance between FDC Honolulu and Straub Medical Center, where NIR LLC actually operates from apparently, and it's 8 miles, a quick 15-minute drive. And to make things worse, the same time in February of 2025, when that agreement was being signed between ICE and Honolulu, Elon Musk's Doge was still in the White House. You remember that? And they had apparently, while they were there, had fired 20 FDA employees that month in February. And so I looked up which department they were from, and they were from none other than the Office of Neurological and Physical Medicine Devices. Yeah, the exact office that oversees Neuralink's clinical trials. Anyone else feeling a little bit queasy, or is that just me? And so I'm looking into this further, and I found that when detainees are transferred to Hawaii, they're apparently often going through 5 to 7 different facilities first. Like, one detainee was arrested in Florida in May and then went through 2 other facilities, then to Louisiana, then Arizona, and then some California facilities, and then landed in Hawaii. He wasn't even served with a charging document until June. That's a month of completely unaccounted time. Just think about it. Not only is there minimal oversight during that month, but then by the time that they get to Hawaii, they're 4,500 miles away from anyone. That's complete isolation. And then if they complain after a procedure is over, they can just be deported and nobody would even know about it. That's exactly what happened at Irwin County Detention Center in Georgia, where women were reported as having unauthorized gynecological procedures and then were deported within days if they complained. Oh, and I forgot to mention that in April of 2025, acting ICE Director Todd Lyons had given a presentation at the Border Security Expo in Phoenix, and he had specifically stated that they had been working with Elon Musk's Doge frequently. That just doesn't make me feel any better either. So look, either I'm seeing patterns that just aren't there, or we're watching something horrifying happen in real time. I mean, these are people who can't speak out, who can't sue, who can't even call their families. I mean, these people have moved through multiple facilities with no documentation and ended up moving 4,500 miles away from anybody who could do anything to help them. And if they wake up one day with scars that they don't remember getting, who is going to believe them? I need people talking about this, journalists who are in positions of power who can investigate NIR LLC, and lawyers who are asking about these transfers to come forward and speak publicly about it, and someone with power demanding these answers, because I don't know what to do. Because if I'm wrong, then great. We can all sleep better at night knowing that this is just some bizarre coincidence. But if I'm right, then that means every day that we're not talking about this is another day that somebody could be getting hurt. So I need to walk someone through some new information that I've discovered about Alligator Alcatraz, because I just want to make sure that I'm not going crazy here. Now, according to protest organizers from the Florida Immigration Coalition, there have been at least 6 hospital transports of detainees from Alligator Alcatraz since it opened on July 3rd. 6. But when I looked at the official 911 call records from that area from July 1st to the 21st, which is when this report came out, only 2 calls were logged as medical emergencies during that period. Now stop and think about that for a second. Like, if 6 people needed hospital care, but only 2 emergency calls were made, that means 4 people were transported to the hospital without calling 911. So that tells me that those were probably planned hospital transportations. At least 4 of them were. Of those 6 hospitalizations, we only have confirmed details for about 2 of the cases from different public news reports and public legal filings. Here's where it gets weird, because of the 2 filings we do have information on, they both happened on the exact same day, on July 11th, 2025. The first case that we know about is Rafael, who's a 35-year-old Cuban man, and according to Local 10 News interviews with his mother, on July 11th he was taken to HCA Florida Kendall Hospital for hemorrhoid surgery, and it was a same-day discharge, so same-day operation. Now, it's noted that the facility denied him antibiotics post-op, and he developed an infection and had to return to the hospital on July 16th with chest pains, and by July 20th was reportedly chained to the facility's infirmary room, which was just a glorified tent, according to his mother. Case 2 has to do with Michael Borrego Fernandez, and according to legal lawsuit filings cited by the Florida Immigration Coalition, he was also transported on July 11th for surgery to address profuse bleeding. We don't know from where or to what hospital he was taken to, but we do know that, like Rafael, he was sent back without prescribed antibiotics and developed 2 different complications. So 2 men, 2 surgeries, same day, both denied post-operative care. Weird, right? But let's go back to Rafael's hemorrhoid surgery for a second here, because from what I know about hemorrhoid surgery is that it's an elective procedure, meaning that it's uncomfortable to have them, sure, but it's not life-threatening and urgent. And just given what we do know about Alligator Alcatraz up until this point, where people are being denied basic medical attention, inadequate food, or clean water, discomfort seems to be par of the course. So why would they suddenly prioritize an elective surgery for one detainee? Also, how would they know that he even needed hemorrhoid surgery in the first place? I mean, doesn't that require first medical examination, imaging, or consultations with a specialist to determine if surgery is even necessary? You're telling me that in the 8 days that the facility had been open, that they were taking Rafael just back and forth for that kind of medical attention for hemorrhoids? Come on. Now, some of you may be wondering why I'm so heavily invested in tracking these medical transports, and it's because for the last year or so I've been tracking heavily biotechnology and surveillance technology and the amount of funding that we've been giving to that, and it's important to understand that context here as we move forward. Because the US is in what's known as a biotech arms race with China, and we have been for the past few months. We're talking about advanced medical technologies here, like brain-computer interfaces and neural monitoring to a very invasive degree. And biotechnology can be a very positive thing, but unfortunately in many cases, like in a lot of cases reported with China, they've been experimenting with gene-edited soldiers and seeking cognitive domination through brain-computer interfaces. So something tells me if it comes to being in a race with solving paralysis or cognitive domination, there's one that we're going to be a little more interested in than the other. And China's been rapidly advancing in this field, partly because they have fewer regulatory constraints when it comes to human testing. And they're not exactly quiet about that when they report on it either. When it comes to the US, companies like Neuralink, which is Elon Musk's brain-computer interface company, represents our main effort to compete with them. And they are currently conducting human brain implant trials at the University of Miami, which is about 45 miles from Alligator Alcatraz. What makes this connection a bit unnerving and concerning to me is that HCA, Florida Kendall Hospital, the exact hospital where Rafael and possibly Michael, we don't know, was taken, has direct partnerships with the University of Miami's medical school. They share research programs, medical residents, and according to their own website, the hospital prides itself on active engagement of all learners in research of scholarship. And they also recently spent millions of dollars upgrading their research facilities. Now, proximity is not necessarily a smoking gun, but this context did make me want to research a little bit more about what hemorrhoid surgery actually involves, because again, I'm not a doctor. The surgery itself takes place in the lower rectal area, from my understanding, but the same anatomical region is also an access point, apparently, for what's called the sacral nerve plexus. That's basically a cluster of nerves that control the bowel, bladder, and lower body functions. From a bit more research, I've learned that that same area of incision is used for experimental procedures, oftentimes called neuromodulation treatments, where small devices or electrodes are placed to interface with the nervous system. Apparently, you're just a whole bunch of nerves down there, and you have access to all of your other nerve capabilities through your spinal cord. So the surgical approach for hemorrhoid surgery could potentially provide access to the same nerve pathways used in neural interface procedures. Theoretically, potentially. I'm not claiming that that's what happened to Rafael. Of course, I have no idea what happened or didn't happen to him, but it did make me realize that if somebody wanted to test any experimental neural devices, hemorrhoid surgery would make the ideal cover. I'm not saying that I know exactly what happened in these operating rooms on July 11th, 2025. Of course I don't know. But I am saying that there's a pattern here that looks a lot more like coordination than it does coincidence. And until somebody can explain to me why Raphael needed emergency hemorrhoid surgery just 8 days after arriving to a facility in the middle of a swamp, then July 11th isn't just another date on the calendar, in my opinion. It's evidence.
Hey guys, Chief Lexus here with Internal Services. I just came into the office on an urgent notification. I'm here at headquarters, and I just need to tell you guys what is going on. This is a very urgent notification that we received directly from one of our intelligence facilities in Miami. One of our intelligence specialists, and I'm not going to say their name because for the record I want to make sure that their life is not in danger, but they have sent us clarity on what is currently happening right now at the Chrome's facility in Miami. This detention center has been converted from what has been a detention center for no more than 500 subjects that were supposed to be in this facility, and now is currently at its state, it has 4,000 detainees. This facility has been currently overgrounded. It's extremely overhauled. There's not enough food to go around to feed the mouths of the people that are currently being detained there. In fact, we have now verified reports that only 1 cup of water is issued per 24 hours because there's not enough to go around. 3 subjects have died from being in that facility, leading to the mishandling and abuse from ICE agents in the facility. Local law enforcement in Miami have not been updated on those 3 subjects, and we have no knowledge to who those subjects are because they are claiming that those subjects don't have any IDs. At this time, Internal Services has sent out devices to our officers and to our intelligence specialists to verify more information. We are being denied access. We are being denied access into that facility. We were successful in getting some footage, which I'm sure some of you have seen by now on social media. I am asking that the government lessen its restrictions on the current detainees that are currently there at the Chrome's facility in Miami. We have made numerous attempts to gather information about where those detainees are being transferred from, especially the 3 that died. At this time, ICE agents are refusing to comment on any information regarding those 3 subjects. If anyone has any knowledge on who those subjects are, you are asked to contact us directly via email at ceo@internalservices.net or admin@internalservices.net. At this time, we are asking the public to gather as much information as possible on the facility, and we are in the process of distributing drones for aerial surveillance on the facility. We have gotten clearance from third-party and proprietary action members who believe in the rights and freedoms of some of those detainees. We are receiving word that some of those detainees are actual green card holders and that they have not broken any laws. At this point, we are here to inform the public that 3 subjects in that facility have died from the restrictions and the positions that they have been in, and having had no food and water for over a week. If anyone again has any information, please send it to us. We are working with lawyers and other activists to determine what the root cause was for the following deaths. Thank you guys for watching. We'll keep you updated as soon as possible, potentially this Friday.